"I know it's here somewhere," Venri muttered as their eyes flicked over the ship's instruments. Damned cloud. They concentrated on the swirling dust and goosed the throttle forward, sending the ship deeper into the canyon. According to their instruments, they had a 3-meter clearance, and the black iron vein was ahead. A flash of light, like a bolt of lightning, crossed Venri's eyeline, and just as swiftly it was gone. "Just a dust storm," they muttered. Another flash, this one closer, and accompanied by an impact, rocked the ship. Venri swore and wrestled the controls as 2 more flashes arced through the dust. Another impact, this time above. In the dust ahead, an undulating glow appeared. Venri throttled up, racing forward. As the prospector cleared the haze, Venri saw it. A vein of black iron, pulsing with unnatural radiance, and around it a lightning storm writhing with life. Spark eels, creatures that feast on iron, drawn to the black iron vein just as Venri had been. As the swarm turned to meet them, Venri pulled the stick back and aimed for the sky. Arcs of light crossed the viewport in a kaleidoscope of radiance, and Venri closed their eyes. Hello, and welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast in which I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. I hope you enjoyed the Tale from the Drift that opened up this episode. That was a community submission from friend of the show, Steve Morrison. Steve is the host of the most excellent Errant Adventures podcast, and also has been a guest on this show where he and I ran down some tips for playing both Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforged, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from Steve and I in the coming weeks. So a huge thank you to him for not only submitting a wonderful piece of flash fiction, but also for being very supportive of this show and being pretty much just a huge inspiration, in addition to being a stand-up guy. So Steve, I thank you. If you want to write something for me to read at the start of a future episode, then these are the parameters. Tales from the Drift are 200 words or less and use prompts from 3 rolls on any oracles you like. If you want to roll some dice and write something inspired by the results, then get in touch via the details on screen now. And whilst I have you, why don't you like this video, subscribe if you've not done so already, and click that little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign every step of the way. So last time out, a lot happened. Like, a lot. Needing help with their plan to break the conduit out of prison on Sepulcher, Archer, Luna and Griff returned to the Moon of Rust to try and gain the support of Severnus Kane, who also has comrades in arms imprisoned on Sepulcher. The Moon of Rust is in a much worse state than the last time Archer and Luna were here. The giant radioactive chasm that scars the surface is widening. The criminal syndicate who preside over things have abandoned the refineries, and all the workers are desperately trying to flee the moon before it cracks wide open. Archer and Luna work their way through the last working refinery, finding it still under control of a faction of mercenaries, trying to eke every last resource out of this place whilst they still can. They reach Severnus, who has been stubbornly fighting a losing battle as everyone around him has either fled, been captured, or killed. And Luna attempts to reason with him, and Archer brings home the urgency of their pleas based on how unstable the moon is. Severnus reluctantly agrees, and with the help of his last few trusted lieutenants, plans to retake the final refinery before helping Archer and Luna with their prison break. During the battle, Archer is once again plagued by troubling visions, causing him to lose his grip on reality and time, with him fighting violently and killing many mercenaries without even knowing he had done so, much to Luna's concern. As we left them dealing with the aftermath on Rust, we cut away to the prison on Sepulcher, where Azrael Vega watches over his prisoners, the conduit, Blake Sutton, and another mysterious prisoner, heavily restrained in their cell. We follow Azrael through the prison to another part of Sepulcher, where an iron gate has been constructed, and he reveals that his plan is to wait and see if Archer takes the bait and falls into the trap that he has set for him. So, it is all coming very much to a head here, and I think we'll pick up kind of shortly after where we left off last time. And with the fight over, the survivors from the refinery and maybe some stragglers who have been left behind have emerged from where they were hiding. And now the mercenaries and the remnants of the criminal syndicate are dispatched. It's now safe for them to do so. And I think that Severinus and his lieutenants are unloading that giant hauler, that big industrial transport that the syndicate were loading up. And I think that he's unloading all of the unprocessed crystal. And what he's doing is he is kind of divvying it up between the survivors. And they're all just kind of taking as much as they can carry, kind of loading themselves up, loading up the buggies that have been left behind and filling trailers and makeshift sleds. Because this stuff, this crystal, in this state is super valuable. And I think after about half an hour of this, the caravan of survivors begins to head back towards the spaceport. And their wheels of their buggies kind of loaded down with all this crystal, kicking up these plumes of red dust. And Archer has been sat away from the others, kind of at a distance, both recovering from the physical exertion of the fight, but also the mental trauma of not being able to kind of fully recall how he fought and did those things, and trying to understand what those troubling visions may have meant. And I think Luna has been kind of keeping her distance, and he can tell that she's not scared, but apprehensive, kind of wary of him. She's been stood some distance away from him, just kind of watching what's going on. And she's still trying to process a lot of this herself. As the last buggy departs, Severinus comes over to speak to them both. And he says, they will be able to secure safe passage with that. Everyone will. And Luna says, where will they go? Kane says, with that amount of processed crystal, anywhere they want. And he moves over to Archer and says, our fight here is over, but now we will follow where you lead. The people of Rust will endure, and I will not rest until our imprisoned brothers and sisters are free. And then there's another rumble in the ground beneath their feet. And in the far distance, kind of over at the next refinery along, parts of the other remaining bridge starts to fall away into the chasm below. And Luna says, we better get moving. It's time. And Severinus goes back to the ship, kind of getting his crew together, organising a few bits and pieces. And Luna moves over to Archer, kind of drops down to his level where he's sat, fixes him with a stare and says, are you up to this? And Archer nods, but he's unable to meet her eyes. She says, Archer, are you up to this? And he says, I feel like I'm being pulled towards a place that I've seen and heard and felt, but it's not a place I've ever been. It's calling to me, and I don't know how or why. And I'm scared because I can't explain it, because I can't control it, and because it puts you in danger. Luna says, I can handle myself. We've been through this. And Archer says, I know you can. But if we lose, if it goes south, promise me you'll save yourself. And Luna says, this is ridiculous. Please. And Luna yanks the professor's black iron compass from around Archer's neck and kind of holds it up in front of his face. And she says, okay, I swear it. Is that good enough for you? And Archer is kind of searching her eyes for meaning. Luna feels uncomfortable. This feels like heavy to her, like serious. And also feels like Archer knows something that she doesn't. And then there's another rumble, much bigger this time. And Luna says, "Look, we really do need to go. Now." And Archer gets to his feet, and he grabs his communicator and calls for Griff to bring the Eclipse to their position. And are we going to do anything before we leave? Do we need to do anything? I think one thing we could do is we could try and resupply here. I think that it makes sense, as we're about to go off on a suicide mission, to be fair. I think that maybe Archer would have a quick scavenge of the refinery, maybe, of this kind of battlefield to see what supplies the mercenaries left behind, see if there's any med kits or ammo or any other equipment that he can salvage. And for this, I think we can use our scavenger asset, which says when you resupply by scavenging a wreck, ruin, or abandoned site, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. And I think that this scene definitely qualifies as both an abandoned site and a ruin. So we are going to resupply, and we're going to do so by rolling plus wits. A strong hit. A strong hit, we take +2 supply and an extra momentum. So supply up to 4, momentum up to 5. That is going to set us up nicely. So Archer kind of swiftly and skillfully works his way through the wreckage of the fight, seeing what can be salvaged and scavenged. There's an ammo clip here, a stim booster there, and in the refinery he's able to strip out some cabling and some other bits and pieces from panels, motherboards, and parts of the machinery that would otherwise patch up something on the Eclipse. And Luna kind of watches in wonder as he kind of efficiently and quickly picks through what to her looks like useless scrap, but to him will be something very specific and useful. And he has this little crate, and it's full of bits and pieces, and he leaves the refinery and watches as the Eclipse starts to set down in front of the hauler. And Archer kind of drops the crate and he's kind of frantically motioning for Griff to park inside the hauler. And after kind of much arm waving and confusion and trying to kind of communicate, Griff eventually gets it and brings the ship into the hull of the massive industrial hauler. So we need a plan, don't we? We're setting off to Sepulcher, and we are doing so to break the conduit out of prison. And we are doing that because she is the only person that Archer knows that can give him any kind of insight on how to navigate the conflict between the clans, how to get some kind of advantage in finding the super weapon before they do, because she's clearly sitting on more information than anyone else, and this knowledge has clearly got her into trouble. She has kind of pushed her luck too far, and she's going to be killed for her indiscretions. Now, we as an audience know that she is being held on Sepulcher by Azrael Vega and Clan Thorn, but Archer doesn't. And he also doesn't know that she's being used as bait. And this, I think, raises a wider point. What do we know about Sepulcher? Because we rolled it up 6 months ago now. And I think it's probably time to revisit some of these details. We established that it was an orbital settlement that had a population in the hundreds and had unyielding authority. Now, we reminded ourselves of that last week. But we also established something back in Session 0, which is quite interesting. We established that Sepulcher's primary activities revolved around hunting. And now that obviously doesn't quite fit with this idea that it's a prison. But then I don't know if you remember, maybe kind of 4 or 5 weeks ago, I said that whilst I didn't have anything planned out for the sector, I did have one idea for Sepulcher and the frozen planet that it orbits, the planet of Varnholm. Well, that idea was that Sepulcher is a remote Clan Thorn outpost, and the planet that it orbits is this harsh ice planet. And that planet is home to some of the most hostile wildlife in the entire sector. And Varnholm is where Clan Thorn soldiers become Bannersworn. They go through this ancient ritualistic trial where they are shipped down from Sepulcher onto the planet and have to survive being hunted by whatever monstrous horrors dwell down there, having to maybe even kill one of these terrible beasts as a rite of passage to become Bannersworn. And this trial is called, and I am now about to tie neatly into a bow, a loose plot thread that has been dangling for 22 episodes. And this has really been bugging me, although I dare say none of you will have given this a second thought, that the trial is called Kashiba. And that's important, because when Archer ran into the two Bannersworn on the Wreck of the Creation back in episode 2, that's what they said to him. They said to him, Kashiba. And it was an attempt to identify him as another Bannersworn. And obviously he had no idea what they were saying or what that meant, so it led to a fatal gunfight. But anyway, that is what Sepulcher is, and that is what Valnholm is. And the orbital station also doubles as a prison. And from that, you can guess how its prisoners are executed, because they have to run Kashiba unarmed. So that's that. And no one in the party knows this. Like, no one on this ship heading to this prison planet knows any of these details other than it's a prison. I think that's about it. I think that they will all know someone or know of someone who has been to Sepulcher and never returned, but that is about the extent of it, and they do not know anything more. So, we are heading there in this industrial freighter, this hauler. And I think that the idea behind this, the reason we're doing this, is because it will probably be a bit more circumspect than the Eclipse. And I think it would not be unusual for a hauler like this one to come and go from Sepulcher, because in addition to its ceremonial function as part of Kashiba and its penal function, it is also somewhat of a way station, I guess. It's quite remote, so it's somewhere that the kind of parts of the Clanthorn fleet might refuel or resupply. And I think it's not unusual for other ships like this one to be coming and going and keeping it well stocked of fuel or whatever else they might need. So what I'm saying is, it's not going to be outrageous if a ship like this shows up, but it would be if the Eclipse did. So this is what we're going to go with. So let's go there. We know where it is on the map, and now here's where I retcon something. Because if we were flying in the Eclipse with the information that we have on board in the navigational computer of our ship, this would probably be the move undertake an expedition. Because as you can see on the sector map we created, there is no passage to Sepulcher. But I'm going to do a bit of a retcon here, and I'm going to say that this ship, this hauler that we're in, has been all over this sector and has probably even been to Sepulcher at least once. And I think what I'm going to do here is mark a passage on the map that wasn't there before. And that is narratively a bit more appropriate and will also be a bit of a benefit to the show, because we're going to have to make one move once rather than spend half an episode undertaking at least kind of 3 or 4 separate stages of an expedition through unknown space. Whilst I totally enjoy doing that, we are trying to move towards a finale here, so let's get a move on. So we're going to make the move now, and that move is set a course, where I'll be following a known route, so rolling plus supply. A strong hit. Disconcerting pair of strong hits to begin the episode. A slight worry. A strong hit says you reach your destination and the situation there favours you. Take +1 momentum. So, momentum up to 6 could come in handy. So, let's envision this. The hauler leaves Russ behind. And hopefully forever in Luna's case this time. Although I kind of guess there's a bit of a ticking clock there on that one. It's literally coming apart at the seams. So the hauler jumps into the drift, and it's piloted by one of Severnus's comrades. And whilst this huge thing is working its way through time and space, and even though in the drift ships are travelling faster than light, this still somehow feels slow and sluggish. The crew on this mission have some time to kill. There's Archer and Luna, and then there is Severnus and his retinue, and I think that totals 7 people altogether. And There's a lot of discussion about the plan and the approach they're going to take. No one knows what awaits them at Sepulcher, but everyone is expecting a high-security facility crewed by well-armed guards. Now, this team is packing some firepower themselves and a limited amount of explosives, plus whatever combat skills they have between them. So they hatch a plan. And that plan is, the hauler will dock, as if making a delivery, as if making a supply run. And then from there, it's up to Archer to gain access to the station's central computer. And from there, they can try and figure out where the conduit and Severnus's imprisoned companions are being held. And from that point on, the plan gets kind of vague. It gets kind of woolly, to the point that they will be pretty much just kind of winging it. And should things go badly, it's agreed that they will flee in the eclipse and they will detonate the hauler to cover their escape. Now, this plan, if you can call it that, is one that no one is particularly happy with. But without any inside information, or even any outside information, they have no idea what to expect. So this is what they've got. They're hoping that even if it does come down to a straight fight, they have the element of surprise on their side. So with all this decided, they all kind of split off and go and prepare or get some rest. And Archer is sat under the gull wing of the Eclipse, kind of fine-tuning some sensor or whatever on the outside of the hull. And Severnus approaches him. He stands behind Archer, who doesn't turn around to greet him, just kind of continues working away on the ship. And Severnus says, "You can trust me, you know." And Archer just kind of keeps working, not paying him much heed. He continues, "Blake Sutton is an old friend who lost her way. When you are fighting to survive, you may find yourself fighting alongside unexpected allies, but like you, they have their own agendas, their own stakes." And Archer kind of stops working for a second and says, "She would have killed us both in a heartbeat as soon as she had what she wanted from us." Severnus says, "I am sorry, truly sorry. I knew what she was looking for. I did not know the lengths to which she would go." And Archer nods, and he kind of knows that Severnus is being sincere. And he says, "You think this plan will work?" And Severnus says, "We have no choice but to make it work. We have nothing left but what is right in front of us. We fight today. If we win, maybe we fight tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day, and so on. Struggle and sacrifice. The wheel forever turns." And Severnus moves over and clamps one of his powerful metal hands on Archer's shoulder and says, "Get some rest. You will need it." And he walks away, leaving Archer alone. And we'll cut there to several hours later, and an alarm blares crudely throughout the entire ship, warning everyone on board that they are about to drop out of the drift. Archer had managed to get some sleep, but that is very much over now. He quickly hops out of his bunk and makes his way into the Eclipse's cockpit, where Luna is stood, ready for action, her rifle slung over her shoulder. She looks focused and calm, which is in stark contrast to the anxiety that is just buzzing through Archer. He goes to her and says, "Remember, you promised me." And Luna says, "Enough already. We've been through this." And Archer says, "Then let's go." And they join the rest of the crew in the cockpit as the hauler drops. It's a far slower, far bumpier ride than on the Eclipse. And after what seems like several minutes of alarms and sirens and flashing lights, and the whole ship just generally feeling like it's about to explode, the reds and oranges and purples outside fade, and the hauler reaches its destination. So what does this place look like? Well, first there's Varnholm, the ice world. It's this dull grey sphere, a kind of giant frozen orb. What shall we observe from space? 18 is frozen oceans, and 70 is vibrantly coloured ice. Okay, so the dull grey patches of land on this planet are dotted in amongst these bright turquoise sheets of ice that span vast stretches of the surface. And it's quite a contrasting appearance in these two features that kind of dominate the entire planet's surface. But there's also this dark blot on the landscape, this blocky black dot. And as the hauler moves slowly nearer, that black mark looms closer. It's an orbital space station. It is Sepulcher. And just the look of it makes Archer's heart sink. So what does it look like? Well, I kind of envisioned it as being this kind of angular, stepped construction, kind of like if you cut a cross-section from like a Mayan pyramid. And it's kind of carved out of this black granite. And it has this kind of triangular shape with the widest point towards the top, this long black solid rectangular block. Then each block is on the underside of the next, kind of getting smaller and smaller. And as they get closer, they can see something else. What is it? Let's roll up a detail. 42. 42 is high-tech construction. Okay, so as they get nearer, they can see that this place may have seemed bulky and functional from a distance, but up close, the design is sleek and the design is concise. And there is kind of little mess. There's hardly any waste. A lot of stations and outposts that are in the Outlands are kind of built up over many years with kind of new sections replacing or built on top of old sections with whatever materials are available. But not this place. This place is purpose-built and it's been done with the minimum of waste. It's almost kind of elegant in its design. It's as elegant as it is functional. There you go. There's a juxtaposition for you. Elegant as it is functional. Okay, so our set of course moves said that when we arrive, the situation favours us. So what I'm going to say here is that there doesn't seem to be a great deal of activity in or around the station from this viewpoint. Like none at all, really. It's just this high-tech, upside-down black triangle hanging in space. And the pilot of the hauler transmits a clearance code. It's an old code, but it checks out. And after a tense kind of moment of silence, they receive kind of text permission to dock. And they are instructed to dock in Hangar Bay B. So the hauler kind of slowly swings around and kind of begins to make its approach. And you can see Hangar B is located, I don't know, about halfway down this kind of upside down pyramid. And it is directly underneath a larger hangar, which is Hangar A. And from here, it looks much larger, but also has these kind of strange decorative details around its entrance. And you could probably be forgiven for mistaking those flourishes for thorns, but they don't actually match anything that Archer has seen as part of kind of Clan Thorn's regalia in terms of style or even form. But they sure do look like thorns, which kind of makes Archer think twice. And as they pass underneath Hangar A, they come into Hangar B, which is kind of small. It's just big enough for the hauler to fit inside and not much else. There's not really much wiggle room in here. It is dirty. It's dimly lit. There are ramps on either side where the hauler comes to a rest, and kind of like a series of forklift type vehicles and tracked sleds that are used to kind of load and unload these ships. And out front, there is a small terminal, and behind that is a kind of bank of consoles with monitors, but there's no one stationed there. This is kind of empty. And Archer reasons that this is where ships come in, they unload and they leave. There's no red carpet, there's no pageantry, they just turn up, drop off and get gone. And from the looks of things, they were very much not expecting an arrival today, because there's no one here to greet them, no hangar crew, nothing. This is a situation that certainly favours them. So we have a window of opportunity here. So the landing ramp lowers, and they all begin their descent onto Sepulcher. Archer is the last off the ramp. The others move up ahead and move kind of swiftly into position, kind of guarding either side of the double doors or crouching in cover behind the monitors in the consoles and the kind of terminal. But as Archer steps off the ramp, the very second his foot touches the floor, his vision blurs, and he sees a flash of the black glass spire in the desert. And he hears those screams again, those piercing screams. But then it's all cut short by Luna's hand on his arm. She says, "Come on, stay with me." And he kind of shakes it off and kind of follows her up the ramp to the terminal where the rest of the rescue party are kind of lying in wait. And they're waiting to take out the hangar crew, right? I think they're just going to subdue whoever arrives, and then that's X amount of people they don't have to worry about anymore. So, am I going to roll for this? Should I roll for this? Not everything is a roll, but this does feel risky. What would the move be? Would the move be battle? It is going to be a fight. It could be a fight, although they could put up no resistance. Face danger? I think face danger is actually more appropriate here, because we are attempting something risky using deception or stealth, because we are kind of ambushing them. So yeah, we're going to face danger here. So using deception or stealth is going to be face danger, rolling plus shadow. A strong hit. Okay, that is 3 in a row now. So I'm sure that won't come back to haunt us at any point if any of this previous campaign is anything to go by. But on a strong hit, you are successful. Take +1 momentum. So we're up to 7 now, and looking, dare I say it, in reasonably good shape. So, what happens? The rescue party are lying in wait, and they're ready to ambush whoever is going to walk through the door. And they wait patiently, they're poised, and after maybe a minute or two, they start to hear voices grow nearer. Several voices coming from the corridor on the other side of the double doors. It's this tense moment, and then the doors swing open, and 6 hangar crew enter. And some are still kind of getting into their overalls, and others are kind of yawning as they emerge into hangar B, ready to unload the latest arrival. And one of the crew says, "Anyone see a manifest for this one?" And then they kind of tap at the keyboard on one of the consoles and says this one's out of rust. You ever hear of rust? And then another comes over to join them and says, "Let me have a look at that." And that's when Archer gives the signal. Severinus moves quickly, grabbing one of the crew around the neck, kind of choking them unconscious, and the others follow, and within seconds, each member of this hangar crew, this poor, unfortunate hangar crew, just come to work on a normal day. They're on the floor. They're knocked out. And the last of them is taken out by Luna, who kind of vaults over the console and takes down the crew in front of the monitors with a kind of flurry of powerful blows. And Severinus and the others start to search the crew for key cards and kind of security passes and things like that. And their uniforms are just these kind of grey overalls that are pretty much similar to what everyone's wearing anyway, so there's not much to be gained by disguising ourselves. So that went okay. What's the next move? Shall we see if we can find out anything from the consoles? I think one of the crew logged in at least, so That's good that they managed to do that before Luna kicked them into next week. I think Archer will do that, yeah. So he's going to pull up a seat in front of the consoles and he starts typing. He's looking for information, and specifically what we want kind of blueprints, don't we? We want kind of like a layout of this place, kind of like a floor plan or whatever. And I think that move is going to be gather information. So we are going to be rolling plus wits. Strong hit. 4 strong hits in a row now. How is this happening? So, on a strong hit, we discover something helpful and specific. The path you must follow or action you must take to make progress is made clear. Envision what you learn, then take +2 momentum. So, inconceivably, we're at 9 momentum. So we're nearly at the maximum. So let's figure out what we discover. And I think on a strong hit, it's got to be the full plans of this place, right? I think it has to be. So Archer kind of brings up the main operating system, and it doesn't take too long to kind of find out what he needs to know. Within seconds, he has brought up kind of detailed plans of this entire station. What those plans tell him is that the holding cells, the kind of the prison cells, are on the very top of this upside-down pyramid. The widest, largest part of this structure appears to be the prison section. And I'm going to say that this place has 9 levels. And if the prison is at the top, that's level 1. And we are in Hangar B, which I'm going to say is level 6. So we're kind of more than halfway down. But this is where we need to go. This is where we will find the conduit. So I think the whole team is kind of gathered round the console and has now learned the information that I kind of just told you lot. And Archer is kind of pointing out things on the screen and says, there's a service elevator that runs to all floors here. And he kind of points that out on the blueprints and says, the holding cells are up here, but there is only one way up, one way down. And he's kind of pointing at the elevator and kind of pauses to think and consider his options before he says, if we split into 2 teams, one team will head straight up to the holding cells. The other team will get out of the elevator here. And Archer kind of selects kind of Severnus's compatriots for this job, and he points them to level 3 and says, this is where the central security controls are. If we can take that out, we should be able to override door locks, alarms, everything. But you need to be quick and quiet. And they kind of all nod in agreement. You need to have those locks down by the time we get to level 1. And then hopefully the guards will have their hands full when all the prisoners start wandering out of their cells. In the chaos, we'll grab who we need and get back to the elevator. Now the controls to the external elevator doors are also in the central security hub, so you need to rig a charge that will blow out those too. With those gone, no one should be able to get on. We then manually override the doors back at the hangar, prime the hauler to blow, then escape in the eclipse. And kind of leaves that sitting with the group. And Severnus kind of sagely nods and says, this is a good plan. And Luna says, surprisingly good. Archer says, thanks. And they get ready to put this plan into action. They head out into the corridor from which the hangar crew appeared. The coast is clear. The elevator is at the end of the corridor, and there's not much else beyond a few kind of portal windows where Varnholm can be seen in all its icy Arctic glory down below. And they waste little time getting to the elevator using the hangar crew passes to gain access. The elevator is big and spacious. It is hexagonal in shape, and it's big enough to fit 20 people in easily. It has this metal grating on the floor, which is shiny and clean. There's little of the industrial grime that seems to be present on every other planet in every other place. This is kind of almost sterile. The controls are on the wall by the door, and they're simple. There's 9 levels, and there is 9 buttons. And there's also controls for the doors. Archer presses the buttons for level 3 and level 1. And the doors slide slowly closed. And there's this sharp collective intake of breath. And the tension amongst them is palpable. There's a light-up display above the doors that shows the upcoming floor. It takes what seems to be an age to start moving, slowly heading up through the complex. And the numbers on the light-up display slowly light up one after another, and they just need to get to level 3 without anyone else getting on. They move to level 5, then slowly up to level 4. And then there's the briefest of pauses, just this split second before it moves on to level 3. And in that brief second, I think everyone felt their souls escaping from their bodies a little bit. But they've reached level 3. And Archer moves to the controls and everyone else kind of hides themselves on either side of the doors. And they slowly part to reveal another pristine corridor with metal grating leading to a set of heavy blast doors up ahead. And the 4 freedom fighters from Rust move swiftly towards the doors. As they reach them, one of them motions back to the elevator for the others to continue upwards. Archer presses the button and the doors slide closed. Level 2. Level 1. Archer turns to Luna and Severnus and says, "Get in, get out, stay alive." And Luna says to Severnus, under her breath, "He says that a lot." And she readies her rifle as Archer presses the button for the doors. But nothing happens. He presses it again. Still nothing. And there's a display to the right of the console that reads, "Security access denied." Because obviously the hangar crew don't have access to this level. Why would they? And Archer presses the button again and again and again. But the same message flashes up on the display. Security access denied. And Archer starts searching the panel for some kind of like access point. Maybe he can kind of jimmy it loose and hotwire it or something. But as he does, he keeps hitting the button over and over, somehow expecting a different result. But then he does get a different result. And just kind of on the 12th or 13th press, the display reads, "Security access override." And he reasons that they must have done it down on level 3. They must have taken control of the central security hub. And that is great and everything. But now the doors are opening, and Archer, Luna, and Severnus are about to set foot into a high-security prison. They don't even have time to move out of the way or hide to kind of get in the wings of the elevator for cover. The doors slide open, and they are completely exposed. They see a long, long corridor, once again pristine. And on either side are dozens and dozens of heavy cell doors. There is bright strip lighting running overhead, but the walls are featureless except for the doors. And the corridor is wide enough for probably 5 people to stand shoulder to shoulder. And they know this because there are 5 Clanthorn Bannersworn stood shoulder to shoulder, looking back at the elevator. They are armoured, and they are carrying heavy assault weapons. But they also look confused. They are confused by both the opening of the elevator doors and the unusual passengers within, but also by the fact that the red lights on either side of each and every cell have just turned green. And you know what? I think it's time we entered the fray. So, when we initiate combat, or are forced into a fight, we envision our objective and give it a rank. Now, instead of this fight's objective to be just to kind of take down these 5 Bannersworn, I'm going to make this entire thing more long form and objective based. And I'm going to say that the objective, now that we've been rumbled, is to fight our way out of Sepulcher. And I think rank-wise, this is going to be formidable, which means that each time we mark progress, we just fill in 1 box. So how are we entering the fray here? We're not on the move, and we're not at close quarters, but we could say that we are facing off against our foe. We could say that we are preparing to act against an unaware foe. And we could say that we are also caught in a trap, so it could be any of these 3. But what I'm going to say is, is that we are facing off against our foe, and mainly because I don't think we've entered the fray this way before. But also it's appropriate because we're as surprised as they are. So, we're not ambushing them. They're not ambushing us. It's just a kind of like, oh, hello. So we're facing off against our foes. So we are going to roll plus heart. And of course, the run of strong hits ends here. Of course it does. Of course we roll a miss when there is a bunch of soldiers with massive guns looking at us when we're completely exposed. So that is a miss, and our momentum will only turn it into a weak hit, so I don't think we will burn it. We'll save that for something more important later. So on a miss, the fight begins with you in a bad spot. So I think these Bannersworn just swing around and light up the elevator, kind of laser fire, just tearing through the air, forcing Archer and Luna and Severnus to dive out of the way, taking whatever cover they can in the wings as sparks rain down on them and kind of all hell breaks loose. So that was a good start. We're instantly pinned down in a kind of cul-de-sac. We can't go anywhere other than back down, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of this expedition. So it's time to think fast, Archer. So he kind of looks up as the laser fire continues, and he kind of can see that first cell door on the left-hand side of the corridor, and he notices the green lights on either side, and kind of thinks about what the Bannersworn's confusion might have meant. And he thinks that if the others did bring down the security controls, that these doors are all now unlocked. And he's going to gamble that that's true. He's going to get to his feet, and he's going to try and make it to that cell. So we're going to make the move, react under fire. So when you're in a bad spot and take action to avoid danger or overcome an obstacle, envision your approach and roll plus wits. And we're rolling plus wits because we are changing the plan, finding a way out, or cleverly bypassing an obstacle. So rolling to react under fire plus wits. A weak hit. Okay, so you succeed but face a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move and stay in a bad spot. So Archie gets to his feet, and Luna watches in dismay as he looks like he's going to make a run for it. Before she can get into any kind of position to provide even any kind of basic covering fire, he's up and running. He is ducking beneath the hail of gunfire, kind of keeping low, moving at speed. And she kind of watches him, kind of aghast, as he somehow evades being shot and sprints towards the nearest cell door. And he launches himself into it, slamming into it with his shoulder. But as he does, he kind of forces the handle down at the same time. And to Luna's amazement, it opens, and he disappears inside the cell. And Archer finds himself face down on the floor of a small cell. And as he gets to his feet, he takes a stiff, hard kick to the stomach. And he rolls over in pain, and he sees the cell's occupant stood over him. It's a fair-skinned woman with this shock of bright pink hair. She's kind of slender in build, no older than kind of early 20s, but she has a kick like a mule. And I think as a result, we'll suffer some harm here. That can be our suffer move. So we'll take our health down to 4 from 5. But I'm going to try and shake that off, I think. So I'm going to try and endure harm. So rolling plus health. Ooh, a strong hit. On a strong hit, we can shake it off and take the health back, or embrace the pain and take a momentum. And you know what? I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the momentum. So we're up to the maximum of 10. So I think that the woman who's in this cell is now at the door, and she's kind of surveying the gun battle taking place outside, surveying the danger. And she turns to Archer and says, "Are you breaking us out?" And he's kind of wincing as he gets to his feet. His rib cage has been rattled by that kick. And he says, "Something like that." And she shrugs because this plan isn't going too great by the looks of things. And we need to turn things around. I think Archer moves to the doorway, and from there he can kind of see back into the elevator. He can see Severnus and Luna and see that they're still pinned down. But he signals to let them know that he's okay, and he has his gun ready. He has his pistol out. And he motions to Luna that they're all going to coordinate and return fire. And he leans around the door, using it for cover, and he fires off a volley of shots towards the Bannersworn. So we're going to make the move Clash, which is how you fight back when you're in a bad spot. And when we do this, we are trying to wrestle control of the fight back, but on a miss or a weak hit, sometimes it can get much worse. So we're fighting at a distance, so let's roll plus edge. A strong hit. On a strong hit, you overwhelm your foes and are in control. Mark progress twice. Okay, so marking progress twice, that's up to 2 out of 10. So Archer is on the mark with his first few shots, and he drops the first Bannersworn. As they hit the floor, Luna gets to her knees, uses the break in the fire to unload with her rifle, and another Bannersworn goes down. And this buys Severinus the time to move to the cells on the right-hand side of the corridor, and now he's ducking in through an unlocked door. Archer can see the remaining Bannersworn, and they're starting to kind of fall back, and I think we need to press the advantage here. I think we need to kind of move into a better position, and we're going to do that by making the move gain ground, because we are seeking to reinforce our position, and I think that Archer he knows deep down that he has to be bold. He didn't expect Bannersworn to be here, although, duh. And he's kind of realised that he's in the lion's den, and they can't hang around. So he's going to move out into the corridor, kind of exposing himself to be shot at, but he's going to kind of stay low, he's going to aim carefully, and he's going to fire with his pistol. And yeah, hopefully this will go all right. So we're going to do something that Archer's not very good at, which is boldly charge into action. So by making the move gain ground, we are going to roll plus heart. That is a weak hit. So on a weak hit, it says we stay in control, and we can choose one of the following. +1 on the next move, +1 momentum, or mark progress. And I think we'll mark progress, so we are going to mark progress up to 3. And I think that this represents the last of the Bannersworn goes down. I think that Archer's right on the money with his shots, and he's dropped the nearest 2. And I think Luna is able to kind of pick off the other Bannersworn from inside the elevator. Archer kind of checks back on the others, and they're kind of both okay. And now we're going to start searching cells. And just because these Bannersworn are taken out, this doesn't mean that the combat is over, by the way. We are going to come back to this. We will no doubt run into more resistance as we try and flee this place. But before we do, I think Archer starts furiously searching cells. And at first he's kind of just starting to look through the viewing hatches, but then kind of he realizes that, yeah, the doors are open, so he can just open them. So he does. And in each cell he finds someone either confused or ready to start swinging. And as he kind of leaves the doors open, the prisoners start to drift out into the corridor and kind of ask each other what's going on. And then they start to kind of fight amongst themselves for the fallen Bannersworn's weapons. And from the looks of it, no one looks too certain as to what's happening, because they were locked up a minute ago and now they're not. And there's this weird kind of trio of people who appear to be breaking them out, but kind of not really. It's an odd scene. So Archer checks maybe half a dozen more cells until he opens the door to see the conduit laying on her bed. She swings her legs around and sits up as he enters. Her poker face is inscrutable. She doesn't look surprised or shocked or scared or pleased to see him. And Archer thinks she's beautiful. Because I don't know if you remember, but we rolled up that he finds her incredibly attractive. And she says, "Hello, book." And Archer smiles at her and says, "Don't call me that." And the conduit says, "You coming to break me out of here or kill me yourself?" And Archer says, "The former, but don't make me change my mind." And she moves over to him, reaches up and touches his face. And she knows what she's doing. And Archer is kind of losing himself in her deep brown eyes. And she says, "How the fuck are you still alive, book?" And he says, "Don't call me that." And she says, "You know Vega is here, right?" And Archer says, I don't know who that is. And she can't quite keep a straight face for that revelation. And this incredulous look kind of spreads across her face. And she says, so that's how you're still alive. You're too stupid to realise how much trouble you're in. And Luna is at the door and she kind of coughs. And then she says, guess who I found? And she leads them out into the corridor. And there's kind of general chaos now. Most of the prisoners are out kind of milling around, wondering what to do or bickering amongst themselves. And Luna takes them to one cell, one of the only cells that still has its door closed. And she pushes open the door, and Archer is brought face to face with Blake Sutton, who is standing upright in the centre of her cell, dignified and proud, ready to face her fate. She meets Archer's eyes, and he instantly feels it in his bones again. He feels that pain, the pain he felt on Paxton Hold, that physical and emotional ruin that he experienced. And he feels his grip around his pistol tighten. And Blake says, if you're going to do it, do it. And Luna raises her rifle kind of inches from Blake's face and says, I'll do it. Archer reaches out, lowers the rifle with his hand. Blake says, you opened the gate. You know how. Do you have any idea of the power you wield? And Archer says, yes. Yes, I do. And they kind of just stare at each other. And then he turns to Luna and says, let's go. And they kind of leave, and Luna is kind of confused and upset and immediately angry and says, are you seriously just going to walk away? Let her live? And Archer grabs the conduit by the arm, and they start to push through the crowd, back through the corridor towards the elevator. And Archer says, I'm not a killer, Luna. Nor are you. And Luna says, I can't... What she did to you? And Archer is about to answer when he is stopped dead in his tracks. His way is blocked by a tall man with reddish-brown skin and straight black hair. His face is lined with age, but his expression is placid, serene, peaceful. He is the only person in the entire place wearing heavy restraints. And he's got two other prisoners kind of working to free him from his bonds. And he manages to get one arm loose. And with that arm, he reaches out and puts it on Archer's shoulder, and pulls him close, and whispers something in his ear. And Archer kind of steps back, confused. And as the other prisoners free the man, his restraints fall to the floor with a heavy clank. He stretches his shirtless torso, and clearly having been in those restraints for a long, long time. He smiles softly at Archer, and then winks, as if to say, you may now go. And he steps aside to let them pass. But this exchange has been like so odd that Archer is just kind of frozen in place. But then the sound of gunfire once again fills the corridor, as further up, a second squad of Bannersworn appear, and the elevator must not be the only way up or down. Bodies start to drop to Archer's left and to Archer's right, and the prisoners who picked up guns return fire, and Archer and Luna kind of spin to snap off a few rounds before scrambling towards the elevator, pushing past prisoners desperately, trying to get to the other end to try and find Severinus as well. And they do find him. They find him stood at the cell near the elevator. And they duck into the cell to get away from the laser fire. And Archer says, Kane, let's go. And then they see Severinus is stood looking down at a body on the floor. And he says, they are all gone. Every last one executed, or, and he motions to the body, left to rot. And Archer says, I'm sorry. And Luna says, it's time. And she moves closer to him and says, "We have to go." And he nods. But before they leave, he takes out the folded banner from his bag and unrolls it. And he gently covers the body in the colours of the Union. And he solemnly nods and then steels himself. And they duck back into the corridor. Okay, so we are still in control of the fight overall, so we're going to gain ground again. And as we are fleeing or manoeuvring, this will be doing so, rolling plus edge. Okay, a weak hit, so it's a hit, so we stay in control, but we only get to choose one again. And I think what we're going to do is choose progress, because we have extracted our target and we are heading towards the elevator. Remember, the progress track is tracking an objective via combat rather than just defeating an enemy. So we are up to 4 now on our progress. So Archer, Luna, Severinus, and the conduit force their way through to the elevator. They're pushing people out of the way and dodging incoming hails of laser fire. And they stumble inside, and as they do, Archer hammers the buttons for level 3. Luna takes the time to kind of aim and fire into the corridor. And just kind of can't believe that Archer let Blake go. And Archer is trying to focus on what he's doing, but he's distracted by what the man in the restraint said to him, what he whispered in his ear. But he's kind of snapped out of it when the doors slam shut and they begin to move downwards. He hits the button for level 3 and they watch the numbers go up. 1, 2, 3. And this is where they need to get the others. But then there's this smell of burning coming into the elevator before the doors have even opened. And as they come to a stop, Archer and Luna share a worried glance. The doors open and the elevator is immediately filled with acrid smoke. And they all kind of just drop to the floor to get below the smoke level. And as their vision begins to clear, they see the same corridor that they last saw the freedom fighters moving confidently down. But now it's cloaked in flame and thick black smoke. There are laser blasts cutting through the air. Archer can see a figure to his right, maybe a third of the way towards the double doors, where the central security hub is, or was, I guess. And it's one of Severinus's men. His mask is now off. He's got blood trickling from his nose and mouth. His lifeless eyes stare back at them. His hand is outstretched. A detonator, a matter of inches from his dead hand. They nearly did it. They nearly pulled it off. But this was a trap. This whole thing was a trap, and Archer is realising that now. And he reckons that there were banner sworn down here, and that Severinus's comrades managed to maybe hold them off just long enough before they were cut down. But the detonator being there must mean that they planted the charges but didn't get to set them off. So all they need to do is set them off, and then they can take out the controls to the doors, and then they'll be kind of home free, pretty much. And kind of Archer looks at it, and he reckons he can get there. He reckons he can get to the detonator. It's within reach if he's quick. And he kind of looks back across the elevator to see the conduit and Luna huddled out of the firing line, and then he sees something he didn't expect. He sees Severinus Kane getting to his feet and purposefully striding out into the corridor. And Luna watches in disbelief as he disappears into the smoke, laser fire lighting up the gloom all around him. And Archer and Luna just return fire, but they're kind of firing blind and trying to offer any kind of covering fire that they can. And Archer drops down again as the smoke gets too much and kind of coughs it all up, and he can see the body. And then he sees a metallic hand reach down and grab the detonator. So we're still in control. So we are going to make the move strike here. And I think that Severinus setting off the charge counts as attacking from a distance. So that's going to be rolling plus edge. Yet another strong hit. And a strong hit, it says, mark progress twice. You dominate your foe and stay in control. So we're up to 6 out of 10. There is a split second where the smoke gets sucked away from the elevator, and then a huge blast fills the corridor, sending a fireball hurtling towards them. Archer punches the buttons, and the doors close just as a few wisps of fire lick through the gap, and it forces them all stumbling backwards, and a blast of heat hits their faces. With his comrades and any prisoners from Rust held here, dead, Severinus could not think of a more noble sacrifice than to lay down his life for others, and lay down his life alongside fallen friends, to face the danger of the incoming fire, and to set off the charges to give Archer and Luna a chance to escape, to give Archer a chance to fulfill his vow, to stop the insanity of this clan war. And that's the only way out of this that Severinus could see. This is the fitting, noble end that Severinus saw for his story. But to Archer, who looks across at a visibly shaken Luna, this wasn't heroic or noble. It was just another senseless death. But the wheel forever turns. And now the door controls in the security hub have been taken down in that blast, along with who knows what else. We're moving again. We're at level 3, level 4, level 5. And there's one more level, and they can get back to the hangar. They've sprung the conduit, and we are so nearly there. The number 6 lights up, and Archer punches the button, grabs his comms unit, and hails the Eclipse. He says, "Griff, fire up the engines." And they wait for the doors to open. But they don't. Archer pushes the button again, and nothing happens. And then they start moving. But they're going down. Level 6. The control panel sparks and smokes. Level 7. And this place has taken a great deal of laser fire, and Archer can't get the console to respond. Level 8. And the lights are flickering on and off, and they find themselves down on level 9. 3 floors lower than where they need to be. And Archer just can't get the controls to respond. But after a second of the wires sparking, the doors twitch open. Just a little, just wide enough for them to squeeze through. Luna looks through the narrow gap. And yet again there is another pristine corridor. And at the end of this corridor is a set of double doors. But on the left-hand side, about halfway along, there is a set of stairs. And kind of Luna wriggles her way through this gap, and she's quickly followed by the conduit. And Archer kind of sees where they're going and follows. He's last out. But as soon as he sets foot on the metal grating of the corridor, he feels it. He feels a resonance in his bones. He feels the presence of an iron gate that he knows instinctively is at the end of this corridor, behind those doors. Luna and the conduit are moving up ahead. They're moving quickly, and they're nearly at the stairs now. And Luna looks back and sees Archer hesitate. She waves him on, but she doesn't see the 2 Bannersworn round the corner behind her. They move in, training their guns on her. The conduit dives for cover into the stairwell. Now we're still in control of this fight, so I think Archer is going to have to strike, and he is going to have to try and take these Bannersworn down before they can shoot Luna, because she is basically just a sitting duck here. So we are attacking from range, so that will be rolling plus edge. Now that is a weak hit. But I really need a strong hit here because Luna is totally at their mercy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn my momentum. And I'm going to burn my momentum to make that a strong hit. So we mark progress twice, meaning we are up to 8. And we reset our momentum back down to 2. So Archer snaps his gun level and he trains it on the Bannersworn, who have Luna in their sights. He moves quickly as he fires, squeezing off round after round, and Luna spins round to see the second Bannersworn collapse to the ground in a heap, the other lying a few meters away, motionless. She knows, in that moment, that she was a split second away from being dead. So, let's end this. We have fought our way from the top level right down to the bottom, and I think we have probably done enough to escape here. We are just 3 flights of stairs away from the hangar and a clean escape. So what we're going to do is we are going to take decisive action, which is the move you make when you seize an objective in a fight. Our objective was to fight our way out, and I think we have done just that. So this is a progress move, so we will roll against our progress, which is 8. A weak hit. Okay, a weak hit says you achieve your objective, but not without cost. And then there's an additional table to roll on to kind of add a complication to this. But we will come back to that. So Luna is at the bottom of the stairs, but the conduit is kind of already halfway up the first flight, starting to climb. Archer catches them up, but slows as the double doors at the end of the corridor swing open, revealing the Iron Gate. But not just the Iron Gate. A figure. A man. Azrael Vega. He is sitting on a stool in front of the gate. A gate that is emitting its pale blue luminance and a constant low hum. He stands. He wears a long coat, collar turned up, black hair slicked back, immaculately neat. He walks out of the room, slowly and calmly, moving towards Archer and Luna. And he says, "The Scavenger and the Stowaway, we meet at last." And Luna raises her rifle, and he says, "You don't want to do that." And there is a flash of pink in Luna's eyes, and she says, "No." And she lowers the gun. She looks at Archer, confused. And Azrael says, "We have much to discuss. I'd very much like to know what you have discovered." And Archer says, "I won't help you." And Azrael says, "Oh, you will, one way or another." And Archer says, "And then what? You get the weapon and you dominate the other clans, you rule every sector." And Azrael tilts his head and kind of looks at Archer quizzically and kind of smiles this unnerving smile and says, "Is that what you think we're fighting for? Dominance?" Archer doesn't say anything. Azrael moves closer and says, "We have all been searching for the lens." And by the way, the lens is what we're calling the super weapon now, so thank you to viewer Andrew Savin for that name. I am forever grateful to you. I'll continue. Vega says, "We have been all searching for the lens for years. It is the only known weapon powerful enough to protect us." And Archer says, "Protect you from what?" And Vega looks at Archer again, quizzically, almost sympathetically, and says, "You really have no idea what's out there, do you?" And Archer kind of isn't sure what Azrael's talking about and doesn't even know if he's stalling or bullshitting or what. But what he does know is that he has just seen something out of the corner of his eye. Something outside, through one of the portal windows in the wall. He strains to see, but there is something there. It's a ship, It has just dropped out of the drift in a tangle of red and purple. It's an old ship, a transport by the looks of it, pretty badly beaten up, seen better days. And then another ship joins it. This one is smaller, a little service craft. It also is many years past its best. Archer and Luna move closer to the window, and Azrael now is looking too. Another ship drops, a hauler, and another, a huge foundry ship. And one by one, the junk fleet of the Circle of the Silent Dagger is amassing in Varnholm's orbit. Because we rolled a weak hit when we took decisive action, one of our options on the complications table was: the victory is short-lived. A new peril or foe is revealed. The Circle have arrived at Sepulcher, and they've arrived because Clan Thorn has been holding their leader. They've been holding him on the top level, keeping him constantly, heavily restrained. An archer watches as two of the smaller ships move into attack position, and he says to himself, "Talk about luck." And then he watches as a pair of missiles trail silently through space and slam into Sepulcher's side. And they are all rocked by the blast, which is quickly followed by two more. Archer struggles to his feet, but the corridor is now tilting, forcing him to stumble towards the double doors, towards the room with the iron gate. He looks back to see Azrael sprawled on the floor, clinging onto the grating. He can see Luna grasping onto the handrail at the bottom of the stairs. And then the corridor tilts the right way up again, and their positions in the corridor have shifted. Archer is now on his knees in the ashy grey dirt of the room with the gate, and Luna is being helped to her feet at the bottom of the stairs by the conduit. Between them stands Azrael Vega, whose hands are glowing with a pinky yellow energy. And at the far end of the corridor, there are sparks falling into the elevator, followed by a pair of legs kicking their way through the ceiling panel. And then a banner swan drops through the hole and into the corridor, followed by another, and then half a dozen more. Outside, the junk fleet has dispatched boarding craft heading straight to the top level, straight to the holding cells, straight to the Circle's leader, the man who whispered in Archer's ear. And he whispered just 4 words to him, 4 words that seemed odd, but now made sense. He said, "You are the network." And it makes sense. By turning on the gate in Paxton Hold, Archer has become connected to the network of iron gates. He doesn't need Blake Sutton's map. He is the map. He looks out at Luna, who is looking frantically up and down the corridor. Archer turns to the gate, strides up to it, feet crunching through the dirt. He makes the circular symbol slowly, tracing it in a pale white light with his fingers, shielding it with his body, making sure Vega can't see. And the gate comes alive. It floods the room and the corridor with a brilliant, blinding white light. Archer looks at Azrael, still approaching, relentless, driven by some terrible mystic energy. And he looks at Luna and the banner swan approaching. He nods to her. It's time for her to go. She promised. The conduit takes her hand and pulls her, but Luna can't look away. Archer smiles. He takes a step back. There's a blinding flash. And he's gone.